Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just give it another minute. I can still see participants are joining. So I'll give it 30 seconds or so before we officially start. So just about 30 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, while others join in. All right, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or rather should I just say greetings, because I know people are in different time zones. So greetings, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining in from. So welcome to this webinar to talk about the ICAZ Centenary book. My name is Owen Mavengere, and I will be your moderator for this afternoon. We've got a very rich panel today. Some of the most senior people in the profession and other members as well. So I think we will have a very wonderful session, I do believe. So in terms of our housekeeping rules, you will find that you have been muted, but please do make use of the Q&A as we go. Ask your questions there, and then towards the end, I will then just summarize the questions and then read them out to our speakers, and then they will just take a few minutes to respond to us. And let's try and make this as engaging as possible. I think this is a webinar which you will find will be slightly different to what we normally do in recognition of the magnitude of this project that we are here to discuss. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, allow me to call upon the ICAZ CEO, Mr. William Mandisoza, to take the virtual podium and officially welcome us all.
Thank you very much, Owen. A huge welcome to everyone to this webinar. I hope you are having a good day wherever you are. I would like to start my remarks with just a saying from a famous late novelist, which says, if you don't know your history, then you don't know anything. You are a leaf that doesn't know it is part of a tree. Your institute has a history. You have a history. This is what is unfolded in the book we are discussing today. In 2018, we celebrated turning 100 years as an institute, but this is now a celebration of creating and sustaining a culture of integrity for all that time and having to experience it and push it forward. This book was put together over roughly about four years ago as part of maintaining and passing on the qualities and the values that were carried in the beginning of this organization up till now. The book symbolizes the carrying down of that history and the flow from the very first members to all of us present through the various support organs we have from all our stakeholders as well. We are the custodians and stewards of these values that gave birth to the entity, and the book is proof that we have done so for 100 years, and we can do it for another 100 and many more to come. As the current CEO, along with the current council, committee members, we are responsible for carrying on the tradition, looking after the entity and what it stands for. We do live in a community which also helps the institute achieve what it has today, and the book highlights our appreciation to those that have walked the 100 years path with us. We recommend all partners, business associates, and the community at large to have a copy of this book, and then also to take pride of the long-lasting relationships which we have had together. The book was worked on and is done. So this is the launch. What we want to do with this launch is that we want to spread the awareness of the book and the existence of our organization. We want to celebrate our profession and the milestone it took us to be here. Through this webinar today, we will get to understand the full picture of how we want to host the launch and the participation required from each and every one of you. I once again thank you for taking time to join us in this webinar, which I think will help us achieve the core objectives of launching our book to everyone. Thank you, moderator. I hand back to you.
Thank you so much, William, our CEO, for those remarks. I think history is important. And for someone like me, a young member of the Institute, who through this Institute has a better future than I could have had, you know, we owe it to the previous generation. And glad to hear that you mentioned that, you know, we are looking at the next 100 years, which is what we are tasked with, because you know, someone else has been there for 100 years taking care of this institute, and it's our responsibility to make sure that come 2118, people will be celebrating like this. So thank you so much for those brief remarks, our CEO, Mr. William Mandisodza. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, allow me to call in former president, I think our first female president. Her name is Gloria Zvaravanhu. Our second female president, rather. Her name is Gloria Zvaravanhu. You know, in terms of introductions today, I will not really be introducing these people because I do believe everyone is familiar with them. So I will just pick one thing from each of them, which I will mention and end my introductions there. So please welcome former CEO and former president, Gloria Zvaravanhu, who's just going to take us through, you know, just in a few brief remarks, something about the book, you know. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to welcome our second speaker, Mrs. Gloria Zvaravanhu. Gloria, over to you. Please take the virtual podium.
Thank you, Owen, and greetings to everyone. It's an honor to be invited back to this ICAZ podium and talk to something that was put a lot of effort into over the past 3-4 years, and that I was part of a significant part of the journey to its production. So I think the team felt that I would then bring the emotions that went with how the book was started and what transpired in the production and why it's special and why we need to consider it special. So I'll try to do that in very few minutes. I think there was a lot of passion, there was a lot of commitment, there was a lot of collaboration, there was a lot of cooperation that was deployed into this project, and it was really unparalleled, if I may say that. And we will hear from the book champion, but that's MPS Joe, who spearheaded this in a way that was quite amazing. He scribed some of the chapters. He also compiled the book himself. And I believe that he's really spearheaded a project that will be a legacy for him, but also for us as the members of the Institute and for our brand as CAZ. So a lot of good faith was put into the process. The contributors, which again we'll hear more about, were the best in the market in terms of their various attributes and areas of expertise, and they came together for not much which was paid to them, but I think more to support the brand and as an endorsement of their faith in the brand that they were going to be talking about. So this was actually quite good. There was a lot of digging that happened during the process. There was digging as far as going to the University of Joburg's libraries. There was digging into the University of Zimbabwe libraries. There was digging into the archives of the top publishers in the country. And so it took a lot of dust, and it took a lot of time and effort, and a lot of people were involved in trying to get this history out. And it's a very pleasant place to be in, that we now have that book in place that is chronicling this history that happened over a 100-year period. So I just wanted to share a few snippets around why a book such as this. I think some of you might recall that when we had the ICAZ Centenary celebrations in 2018, one of the projects that was committed from that was the book as a way of, writing down our history and be able to pass it forward to the next generation. So this is the book that arose out of that particular project. It was seen very important to put a tangible record of the history of the Institute before we start losing parts of it. And in the process of production, I think it was very apparent that we're already starting to lose bits and pieces of it. So it was the right time to actually gather through, dig into archives and people's minds and try to freeze that history so that we're able to pass on that legacy to the generations to come. So digging into this history unraveled a lot of value of the brand, that was tacitly trapped in minds of members and other stakeholders. It was amazing, some of the things that were unraveled from the interviews. So I think this will be a powerful marketing tool for the ICAZ brand into the future. But not only that, but I think it will be a very good tool to use, even in terms of career guidance for the young ones that are looking to follow the profession. It really is a book that really details how the profession started, the quality management processes that has kept the brand as it is, and the people and the impacts and the role that we've played in the economy, and our involvement into the global space as well as CAZ. So it's quite, I think it's quite a good book, and that will be quite useful in many aspects. So the thing behind the book was 100 Years of Integrity, which speaks to the profession, as integrity is the key principle that underscores our profession, always integrity. So for 100 years, we've been custodians of integrity in Zimbabwe through the economic challenges, through the wins. And so the book touches on the journey and talks to how we managed to sustain integrity and the many other qualities that our brand carry over the century. So why should one get this book as a member or any stakeholder for that matter? I think it captures the genesis of our profession, the journey we've walked, and where we are going. I think that's very important. So it almost maps a way forward that says this is where we've been, this is what we've managed to do, but in the future, this is what you can expect out of ICAZ and the CAZ brand. So it's a journey that has evolved from being a local brand to being a global brand that is accepted in many countries now. There are many interesting interviews in the book from members across the spectrum and across the various age groups, from the oldest member surviving to the young ones. So there are interesting views and insights from various members. There is also a capturing of the key milestones of the Institute over that 100-year history. Some of them we didn't know about. Usually you would know from the time that you became a member going forward, but you might not have a full comprehension of, what transpired before your time as a member. So this book helps to just, bring everything into perspective. What I really enjoyed the most in previewing the book was the quality management processes that are behind the brand and how they started and matured over the years to sustain the brand in the manner that it is. And I think you'll find it quite interesting to read as well as you go through the book. So I think it's a good gift and it's a good legacy to pass on to future generations. Personally, I think we should, as members, try to find a way of paying forward with the book and use it maybe to donate to schools that we've been to, because in the book, it talks to the schools that have produced the most CAs in the country. So it's an opportunity to go to those schools and invest into them and invest into more people actually joining and becoming part of our profession. So I think it's quite an interesting book. It's an interesting read, and it's one that I think for the next 100 years will be a very good reference point in terms of our history. And I think we've successfully managed to freeze history into this book. Thank you, and back to you, Owen.
Thank you so much, Gloria. Thank you so much for that. You really touch on why one should have the book, and that whole issue of paying it forward. That for me is very critical, because we are where we are because somebody else did something a long time ago. So we also owe it to the next generation. So paying it forward is very important. And, the book is definitely a good read, and thank you so much for that. So we are about to have our next speaker, but before that, I'm just going to ask Tembe to just put up, some 2-3 questions, just so that we can kind of get a sense of who's in the room in terms of the webinar. So, the first question is really, are you an ICAZ member, whether you're a student or whether you are any other professional? So please just respond to that. This will just give us a sense in terms of, the composition of this webinar. So are you a member, an AA, a CA, or an FCAZ, or you're an ICAZ student, or you are any other professional? Second question is, where are you geographically speaking? Are you resident locally or outside Zimbabwe? So, and then, do you know anything about this book? Anything at all, even just knowing that, there is a book? Apologies for the typo there. It's supposed to be yes and then no. So yes is the first answer. The second part is actually a no. So the second yes, apologies for that, ladies and gentlemen. So if it's yes, then take the first yes, and then if it's no, then the second one. So that should have been yes and no. Just apologies there. So I'll just allow maybe another 30 to 45 seconds so that people just respond to this questionnaire, just these 3 questions, to give us a sense in terms of the composition of those that are on the call. And yeah, I think Tembe, you can just show us the results. I think it will also be useful for those on the call to just get a sense of who else is with us in the room, the virtual room. Please just share the results. All right, so you find 60% of us here are members, 30% are students, and then about 11% are other professionals. And then 76 are resident locally, and 24% are outside Zimbabwe. And this is a very interesting thing because, the value of this brand is what makes it easy if you do want to work outside Zimbabwe, which is why I always keep repeating how important it is to pay forward, because the brand is strong because someone else did something many years ago. And do you know anything about the book? 60%, 63% do know something. So yeah, I think this is also useful for the next presenters, just to have a sense in terms of the composition of the group and as they give their presentations. So thank you very much, Tebe. I think you can stop sharing this now. And then we move to, the next speaker. So like I said, the caliber of speakers, I don't think I can do justice to their profiles. So that's why I'm not even attempting. I will just pick one thing though, for the next presenter. We all know who he is, the first Black president of ICAZ, I think the year 87. I won't tell you where I was then or whether I was born or not, but he was the president of the Institute way back then, the first Black president, and he has opened the door for so many of us. Mr. Kudenga, good afternoon and welcome. May you please take the virtual podium.
Thank you, Owen. Good afternoon to all of you. It is my pleasure to address you on the occasion of the launch of the ICAZ Centenary book. A big thank you to the organizers who saw it fit to include me in their program. This is a great day in the history of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Zimbabwe. It is a culmination of sleepless nights by the authors of ICAZ Centenary book and the ever-industrious team working behind the scenes. This started as an idea which was vigorously pursued by Nyasha Zhou and his team. And today we witness the official launch of the book. Nyasha and his team have actually immortalized ICAZ. I wish to applaud everyone who made this book a success. This is going to be a useful resource on the history of ICAZ as we continue relying, as we cannot continue relying on oral tradition. Now, the book is a celebration of the brand of ICAZ on attainment of a century. There is a lot that we can learn from what has happened in the past, what has sustained the Institute all the way to the present day. This offers a sound base for us to build an even more solid profession for the next 100 years. ICAZ remains a preeminent institute in Zimbabwe and beyond, and it is imperative that we maintain the status. As a country, we have gone through many difficulties, difficult phases, but ICAZ has remained grounded in its values. Now, I just want to spend a little bit of time about my career as a chartered accountant to help you understand some of the things that I would like to put across and which are covered in this book. Now, I think I have got limited time. I would have actually spent 2 days talking about my career, but I'll just summarize so that you understand some of the issues that come up in the book. Now, I qualified or passed my exams in 1977. And since then, I've known no other profession except that of a chartered accountant. Now, in fact, just for background information, I am a beneficiary of the B.Arch program at the University of Zimbabwe, which is a program that was sponsored by our institute as a way of training chartered accountants. So the Institute of Chartered Accountants worked with the University of Scotland to establish the B.Arch program, which we all know today, which is being given by the University of Zimbabwe. And Professor Sutherland was the first person to introduce the B.Arch program, which was introduced in 1974. And I happened to be lucky in that I was one of the first pioneers of that program. There were a few of us that joined that program in 1974, and we graduated in 1976. Now, having graduated in 1976, a few months into articles, I sat for my final qualifying exam in 1977, and I passed at that first sitting. In 1977, a lot of people would ask, why then didn't you become a member? I passed in my first year of articles, and therefore I had to complete the rest of the period for me to be admitted as a member. Now, in the year that I qualified, there were two of us. One of them was Joseph Kadzirange, who had already, sort of served his articles, but the two of us passed in that year in 1977. So we're the first to pass the institute examinations. Now, having passed the institute examinations, obviously I was excited, and there were a few of my colleagues who also wanted to do articles, but things were really difficult during that time. They couldn't get an opportunity to train as article clerks. And this is what really pained me, to say, why is it that we are not being, my fellow blacks are not being given an opportunity to train as chartered accountants? And this is what forced me Then in 1981, to establish a firm of chartered accountants known as Kudenga and Company in 1981. The main objective was to say, maybe if I establish the firm, I'll be able to train my fellow blacks to become chartered accountants. That was one of my main goals. And the other was obviously to compete with the firms that were in existence at that time. Now, having established the firm in 1981, I quickly realized that it wasn't going to be easy. I even remembered the parting words of my previous trainer to say, you will soon come back knocking on my door, requesting for your job back. And my response was very firm. It will never happen. So when I set up in 1981, I found the going very difficult, very, very difficult. And I had just married with a son, and the things were really very difficult. And therefore, I realized that it was actually going to take time before even the business community would accept a firm of Black chartered accountants and trust them with their business. Now, I therefore realized that I had to find a regular job to fend for my family. Now, going back to 1977, when I had passed my exam, the university was so impressed with the fact that I passed on my first sitting and a few months into articles. So in 1978, I was then invited to start lecturing at the university on a part-time basis. So when I set up in 1981, in order to get a regular income, I then joined the university full-time. Is a full-time lecturer. Incidentally, the chancellor of the university then, Professor Kamba, in 1982, decided to introduce the concept of chairman of departments. And I happened to have been appointed the first chairman of the Department of Accountants at the University of Zimbabwe in 1982. So I had something now to do with the training of accountants because this degree had been sponsored by the institute. But all the same, it was very difficult to get traction in terms of us fellow blacks being accepted or being taken for articles. What I then did was to say, now that I can communicate with the institute, I approached some of the members of the council to say, look, here I am actually training accountants, to become, chartered accountants. You have to facilitate me joining council. And this was actually accepted by members of council. And in 1982, I was then co-opted onto council, because I knew you could only influence what was happening if you were a member of council. So I was actually, co-opted as a member of council, although the bylaws were not yet amended to, introduce the concept of co-option. So I was quickly co-opted. I don't know how they did it. And the following year, Elton Mangoma was also co-opted to join the, the council. Now, the two of us then started working to say, yes, we are now on council. How can we influence the intake of fellow blacks in the profession? Now, we started now negotiating with members of the council. And lucky enough, they then decided to say, look, if rather than you being co-opted, because the bylaws doesn't have that provision, we would sponsor you to be elected properly, because there was no way you could join council without being elected. So they sponsored us to be elected. So we ended up being elected as members of council. And the bylaws were then amended in 1985 to introduce the concept of co-option of members. Now, we continued to fight at the council level, the two of us. And the first thing that we wanted to do was to make sure there was increased membership at the council. The bylaws having been amended in 1985, we continued to push to say, use the bylaws to increase the black members onto council. Until in 1988, 5 members were then co-opted using the bylaws, and the 4 additional members were Godfrey Gomwe, Tembi Sibanda, Willard Zireva, and Noah Zumbe. They were also co-opted onto the council. So the membership at council level was increasing, but still the intake of article clerks was actually not improving. So we persuaded the council to ask member firms to enter into what we call the gentleman's agreement. So the gentleman's agreement was that on recruiting, if member firms should recruit 60% black and 40% others. This was agreed upon at council level, but implementation became a nightmare. In other words, the member firms didn't actually honor that gentleman's agreement. Now, the only thing that we could do was to actually make it a legal obligation. So we approached the Ministry of Justice, who were responsible for administering the Accountants Act at that time. To our surprise, we were actually advised that you cannot legislate on racial grounds. And therefore, we had to go back to the drawing board to see how we could actually improve the intake of our fellow blacks. Because I was already associated with the university, I knew the numbers of student graduates who were doing a BAC program. So we then came up with an idea to say, okay, as far as the bylaws are concerned, let's put possible candidates into categories. And we ended up with 3 categories: category A, category B, category C, category D. A was for those people with an accounting qualification who wanted to convert and become CAs. Category B, BAC or equivalent. Category C, another degree. Category D, A levels. And the ministry accepted our recommendation, and they now drafted the amendment to the bylaws. We held a meeting at one of the hotels. I tell you, it was a heated meeting because we had a contingent from Bulawayo who voted to say, you can't have this legislated because us in Bulawayo, we will never be able to get graduates because graduates are not interested in coming to Bulawayo, so we must be exempted. But we fought and they said, look, this has to go through. And at the end of the day, we won the day, and it was actually implemented. And that is what opened the floodgates for the blacks to enter into the profession, because we agreed that we would monitor the recruitment of article clerks. You have to recruit from category A first, then go into category B, and then go into category C before you go into category D. And that really worked wonders. And because the majority of BAC graduates were blacks, and that's why a lot more people were able to come into training as chartered accountants. Now, soon, within a few years, I think the profession found that this was an excellent move that they had taken, to the extent that it's still applicable today, the way the institute is actually recruiting. So it was really a good move, which was then adopted by all the member firms, and they are actually applying it today. But that's what actually opened the doors for most of us, blacks to actually, get trained. Now, moving forward, I just want to touch on a few other things which I think are really milestones in the history of the profession. And one of them, obviously, is the issue of gender, where even the females, although the doors had actually been opened, females were finding it very difficult to get articles. But I'm glad to say this has actually since changed. Although the target that had been set has still not been met. I think the target we had actually said at the time was about 40%, and I'm told now, as it is, we are above 25% are female members, and it's a challenge to the institute to make sure that that continues to be progressed. Now, the other changes that I need just to mention briefly is the changes that has taken place over the years in terms of the way we conduct our examinations. When we qualified as graduates, obviously, we only had one exam to sit. And over the years, obviously, you know, more exams are being written for you to qualify as a CA. Now, all that was actually being done in order to maintain the standard of our profession, and this has enabled us to be recognized by other institutes right throughout the world. And I must say, this book does demonstrate that we have really maintained our standards as a profession, and our members are being recognized throughout the world. Now, the other issue I want to just mention is that the history of ICAZ is punctuated by pioneers. Now, the book acknowledges those pioneers and their contributions. Some of the pioneers mentioned in the book include, and I'll just read a few names. Alex Smith was the first Rhodesian to qualify as a chartered accountant. Obed Masendeke was the first African to be articled in 1961. Okay, Kudenga and Joseph Kadziranga were the first two blacks to pass the final qualifying examination in 1977. And Clement Ruzengwe was the first black admitted to membership in 1980. Olive Mungazi was the first black female member when she was admitted in 1985. Now, Kudenga was the first one to set up in practice in 1981. And Emilia Chisango was the first female president of ICAZ in 2009. Now, it is by coincidence that my name does feature a lot, but the reason I mentioned the pioneers is that I would like to challenge future generations to perpetuate the pioneering spirit in all areas. If you want to know more about all these issues, I encourage you to buy the book. Now, the other challenges that I want to pose to members of the Institute is that on incorporation of the Institute in 1918, it had 150 members. Now, more than a century later, we have about 2,200 members. My challenge is, are we satisfied with that rate of growth? It's up to you, the fellow chartered accountants, to make sure that for the next century, we really increase the numbers. Now, from what I read in the book, there was a scandal in 1916 that led to a public call for regulation of those code accountants. And that formed the basis of the values that we now embrace as chartered accountants, of integrity and of professionalism and everything. And I would really like to challenge members to say you have to all uphold those founding values for the for us to continue as a respected profession going into the future. Now, I would really like to recommend this book to all members, so that you really read the history, you really look at issues of integrity, look at issues of professionalism, which are adequately covered in this book. And I think Nyasha Jo will actually expound on all these issues. But I would like to say in conclusion that I'm grateful to Nyasha and his team for having put together this book, which shows the history of ICAZ, where we came from, some of the milestones that we covered, and some pointers as to what needs to be done going into the future. I thank you very much for listening to me.
It's not network. I was just a bit stunned. That's all. So I was quiet for those 2-3 seconds. I was here. I was stand, really. Thank you so much, Mr. Kudenga. I think in terms of I don't know where to start, really, trying to summarize. This never happens. I'm never short of words. But I am stunned by those anecdotes that you were just giving us and the challenge that you've given to us as members. And I think, I felt as if you're speaking directly even to me as an individual in terms of how we should continue with that pioneering spirit, and whether or not we are happy with the rate of growth and those demographics that you spoke about. And thank you so much. I think not just for this speech, but as you were speaking, it really then allowed us to see how much work was done for us to be able to achieve what we have achieved. I think we have had it easy, relatively speaking, but you fought. I think you said that it's coincidence that your name appears on so many firsts. And I think it's also a blessing for us, because one thing that I picked from each time you spoke about a first, you also spoke about what you then did to make sure that others get a similar opportunity. Reminds me of two songs, one by Leonard Jakata and another one by Wallace Chimuko. I won't go into that, but you really did then try to make sure that you open the doors. And I think for that, we are really grateful. And the book, you spoke about Obed Masendeke, the first articled accountant, black articled clerk, and all those other pioneers, your Emilia Chisangos and so on and so on. So I think, I honestly don't know where to start to try and summarize that. But thank you so much for that. I think the book really should make an interesting read, in terms of getting all that history and helping us to set for the next 100 years. So, Mr. Kudenga, thank you so much for that. I think, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to now, I think, move on with the program and invite the author of the book. Like I mentioned, that the speakers that we have, I don't even attempt to try and go through their profiles. That's why I'm not even doing any sort of introductions. He is, of course, former president and author of this book. I think each of our speakers could write a book about their profiles, which I think you should for our benefit. After we read the ICAZ book, we want to move into those stories. They will definitely inspire the next generation. So allow me to introduce the author of the book, Mr. Zhou. Mr. Zhou, over to you. Please take the virtual podium.
Good afternoon, fellow presenters, and good afternoon, members of ICAZ. And I just want to say it is a great pleasure and privilege for me to have had the opportunity to go back in history and uncover some of the issues that Ngoni did raise, and what also Gloria covered. And my focus really is going to be on the celebration. The highlights that both Gloria and Ngoni have covered have given an overview of the book. I'll focus on the celebration. I'm sure all of us rush for diamonds. And if you go back into history, you'll know that diamonds come from timber, from wood. But it would have lied down in the ground under pressure, probably for centuries, to turn from mere wood into diamonds that we cherish and value so much. So what am I saying? I'm saying to you and to me that what we have today as our institute, ICAZ, is a diamond that formed and developed over the many years with lots of pressures, the heat and emotion, as Ngoni did address. So this book is about you, is about me, is about our institute. It is about our heritage. We are living in a very unique time. Immediately after the first century and the beginning of another. And probably none of us will see the end of the next, but we are going to be generations that are going to be building and sustaining this institution for the next century. And so as we celebrate today, we need to look back and say thank you to those that founded the institution. Thank you to the trench builders. Thank you to the wall builders. Thank you to everybody who are building this structure that we all cherish and are proud to be members of. I just want to take you briefly on a journey before I say just a few more comments, and then I can, true. Like Gloria said, the book is ready. The book is going to be launched in the next 1 month, and it's going to be on your desks. This is a book that you need to hold. Some can read it overnight, but you can read it over years and time. It's a book that you hold on your table and on your desk for a longer period. So I just want to say to you, the book is ready. What is it that we are celebrating? We are celebrating our heritage. And I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritties of the heritage, but we are celebrating. Anybody who's holding a CA qualification, wherever you are, it may be in the UK, in South Africa, in Dubai, wherever you are, we are holding that qualification because somebody was involved in building that heritage. And so we are grateful and want to celebrate that we built and handed over an institution that is acceptable on a global stage. I'll just, if you look at my presentation, I hope you see this. I'm not focusing so much on the beauty that you see on the slide. I would like you to look at the neck level. You've got a chain of beads that are connected to one another. This book is about connection, connecting from the founders, connecting to the current members, and connecting us together as an institute. The transition that we walked through is about connectivity. Whoever we are, wherever we are, our women members, students, AA members, CA members, we are connected to this highly esteemed institution that is like diamond to us. So as we go through, just imagine yourself as part of this chain. And like Mr. Kudenga Ngoni indicated, the idea is to take ownership and sustain and continue building on the foundation of the founding fathers. One interesting, I'm just giving a slide. As part of our research, we decided to go back and say, where did you go to school? And what university did you go to? And we did an analysis with the students engaged in data analytics, just to identify, I think Gloria did mention it, where did you go to school? And surprise, surprise, while generally there's a feel that our membership come from just the A schools and and so forth. The membership has arisen from a much wider cross-section of communities, both privileged, underprivileged, completely. Surprise, surprise. Why am I throwing this slide on to you? It's because as we launch this book, we want to go back and reconnect. That is why I refer to each of the bid. Want to reconnect back to the school. What is the value chain of delivering an accountant? We want to go back and say to a high school, thank you for providing talent that went to university and became a CA. We want to say thank you to a university who educated Ngoni Kudenga in 1974, made him graduate and qualify, and say thank you. But we also want to go back to that community and say, you know what? We can be light and salt to the community. Part of what Ngoni was raising about giving back, creating, pioneering, we want to go back and be able to be men and women of influence in our communities. And as we do, we are not just celebrating about me, but celebrating about us, and going back to Goromonzi, to Fletcher, to Bonda, to Prince Edward, to Milton High School, to Mutswatunya in Victoria Falls, and say thank you for being part of the creation of this esteemed professional. And that is really what we would like to be able to do, to celebrate together and join our connectedness. So, if you look at the title, we have concluded that our celebration is going to be built on 100 years of integrity. And I need to say to you, fellow members, that 100 years is an incredibly long time. And to sustain a brand for 100 years is no mean achievement. And so we need to be able to clap hands for the founders, but also for every player. But also it creates a responsibility that a bowl of excellence is being handed over to you. You must also in turn hand over to the next generation and another generation, and then come 100 years from now, that generation can say, yes, indeed, 100 year one delivered a good brand. 100 year two delivered an even brighter, they built on the basis of the foundation. So that is really our challenge and our responsibility. And like Ngoni indicated, you know, we went into the market to talk to business people, to talk to members, to take the community. And I need to say to you, members, I was pleasantly surprised. And I remember sharing with the CEO, Gloria, when I came back from one interview and said to Gloria, I've been a member for 40 years. The perception and the view of the market about the CA simply floored me. This profession is held in high regard, amazingly, by a wide cross-section of people. It actually surprised me. I actually drove from an interview to Gloria's office and said, you know what, I've got news for you. But the challenge to me is, if that is the perception today, are you and I keeping up with the expectations of high ethics, principles, values, which is a huge responsibility. So I just want the challenge as we celebrate is to say, if we have had the 10 stars, all that you and I can do and must do is to add another star and another star and another star, and we can color this country with stars of ethics, values, and integrity. So that, why? Because we already have a foundation of 100-year heritage, passed on as a baton stick over 100 years, from one generation to the next, from the founders to us, to Ngoni, to Gloria, to you, and to many more future generations. Did you know that we were there before SAICA was? Just as an interest, in 1918, we were there before SAICA was. By then, what is SAICA today were 4 independent individual members, one called the Cape Town, the Cape, Transvaal, Orange Free State, Natal. We were before. Did you know that the first woman to qualify in 1947, the French by then had not allowed their women to enter accounting. The Italians were even worse. And therefore, there's a reason for us to celebrate. And you know what? In 1964, you pick some of these. I'm just wanting to explain why we must be proud of what we are inheriting, but also take it as a huge responsibility to pass it on and to qualitate it even more. In 1964, the global professional accounting firms said this country was mature to run their own examinations. And all that we needed then was to get external examiners to assist. But there was a general conclusion that this professional organization was competent, professional, high ethics to run their own examinations. Did you know that IFAC, to whom we now subscribe, came after our institute had been in existence? They only came in 1977. We had been there in 1918. And that is a reason for celebrating. Did you know that PAB, our institute used to be part of the PAB in South Africa from 1951. Our local PAB only came in 1996. And therefore, we are much more front runners of professional regulation. Did you know that before the University College of Rhodesia, now University of Zimbabwe, in 1951, your institute was offering accounting lessons in Baker Street in Harare. I'm not sure what we call it now, but I'll refer to Baker Street because we write about Baker Street. But we ran that. Did you know that your institute set up, beyond what Ngoni said, they actually set up the Faculty of Commerce to transfer what they ran in Baker Avenue to the University College of Rhodesia? Did you know that your institute contributed financially to the setting up of the University College of Rhodesia in 1957, and they were granted 2 seats on council because of the financial contribution? Why am I saying this? There's a tendency in members when we reach to where we are today to ignore that building on foundations is critical. Organizational sustainability is developed by people who put time, who put capital, who put money, who put intellect in building a future, not for themselves, but for the next generation. So I just want to say to you, what we are today is what others built over the years. And for students, by 1936, CASH, the Chartered Accountant Student Society, had been formed. And the main reason then was to create a studying capability and facility for students and for them to engage in social and sporting activities. So students, you have got a big heritage. You must go back and say, are we sustaining the reasons why are we achieving our mandate? Like Ngoni indicated, in 1961, when the law in this country said, no, you can't employ blacks, one partner, a Mr. Lewis, predecessor firm to KPMG today, decided to pick one student and said, I will have a try, I will have a go at it. And everybody in council and others simply said, it's not doable. He said, I did. And therefore, there are many people who were pioneers of what we are today. And Caesar Masendeke was the first student. And we've been in touch with his family. And come the official launch, when we celebrate, that lady is going to walk to the podium and will say, thank you for having a husband who opened doors for blacks in 1961. I think some of the bits. Did you know that what is now SAR or ZAT was our project in 1984? And did you know in 2009, the first diaspora chapter was launched in South Africa? And for those who don't know, again, just to inform you, it was that diaspora chapter that Anesu Daka, who was working comfortably in South Africa, said, I've been challenged, I'll go back home. And that is how CAA began. Why am I saying all this? I'm picking aspects that you and I, for us, for our institute, for our children, grandchildren, and for posterity, must continue to hunger and to build. And did you know, in 2010, we had our first woman to have a joint honors and DAF award coming out of Chikanga township. And in the interview, the lady says, you know what? I used to sell at the marketplace with my mom at the flea market for survival, but I was given an opportunity. And those are aspects that we want to celebrate. The birthing of Weekend in 2016, a huge milestone. And like Ngoni indicated, there are now 29% women members, but 49% of our students in 2018 were women. And that tells you that whilst we may not have attained the 40% target, but when you look at the student body, you can see we're gravitating towards that target. And I just want to say that is why we are here to celebrate. How do we plan to launch this book? I'm going to really challenge you. I'm not going to go into the details of the various chapters. We'll wait for the wedding night. And when you have got your book, and you can pick that up. But we have resolved with the ICAZ Secretariat and those around to say, you know what, let's take accounting back to the community. We are going to launch this book in the 12 provincial capitals of this country. We've already lined up sponsors and hosts, and it's amazing the level of support that we have received. We want to launch and take accounting to Mtare, to Masvingo, to Lupane, to Gwanda, to Bulawayo, to Marondera, to Chinoi, to Bindura. And whilst we are going to be launching it virtually on one big screen, but we're going to be inviting the various high schools from each of the 10 provinces to come. University students will be there and some community. And we take a message of, we have walked 100 years of integrity, we can celebrate. Join us in the celebration and join us on the theme of ethics, good governance, and integrity in our communities. And we are going to challenge alumni, those who went to Bonda, those who went to Katsambe, those who went to Wadlove, those who went to Fletcher at the launch as an alumni, to go out there and meet the young men and women and simply say, you know what, I was like you, I walked to school with no shoe or other, but you know what, this is what this institute has done. It has transformed me into a global professional. And we believe out of that, we are going to create awareness on the ethos of high integrity, and two, influencing our community in a manner that will be lasting. As you know, we are now a global brand. Why shouldn't we celebrate? Past President Duduzile Shinya went to North America and the Cayman Islands. And she reports in the interview that employers said, can you supply us with 50 new CAs? I just want to also challenge those that are in the global, in the global market, that because home was this strong, because this brand has been built over years, when you go out there, the diamond must not forget it was birthed in the hood in Zimbabwe. That's a challenge that I want to give. So we are a global brand. I'm proud of that. I'm sure you are. But also, we have a local footprint. We are respected and honored in this market. And the challenge that I just want to share with you is that one interviewee of a large listed company said, when you are a CA, when you are any other career person, you can walk and your footprints disappear. The accountant signature remains in organizations. So our footprint as CAs, as student accountants, as AAs, leave a footprint that is traceable. And that footprint must be recording on the ground. Integrity, ethics, governance. And when we do, we impact our nation. But also we are a global footprint. And at the launch, we've spoken to our members, some who are in the diaspora, in the global market, who go back. Now we're talking to example like Godfrey Gongwe, who went to Mshed Primary School in Bulawayo, went to Mpopoma, Mzelikas, he went to Zimba and others, to say, why don't you go back to Bulawayo and say, you know what? Thank you, Mpopoma, thank you, Mzelikas, for helping to build, putting a brick on me to become what I am today as a global director. And as I get to the end, I'll leave a puzzle with you. I'm sure lots of you have seen our coat of arms. I'm not going to explain to you what it is, because I'm going to challenge you to read the book and find out. This coat of arms is registered at the deeds registry. Like Gloria said, we spent days wanting to understand what all these pictures mean. They mean so much. The only point I want to raise, if you look at the top, the green picture is holding a light. It says CAs must be walking not in the dark, but in the light. And the 100 years work that we have done says, yes, this generation walked, this 100-year team walked, including you and me who are there today. You have walked in the light. And the challenge is that we must continue to walk and sustain that light. As I come to the end, when we go out there to launch the book, we've also chosen that we must find an opportunity to do a plaque which says, ICAZ thanks you for each school that has delivered for us a CA. We have said we want to go back to Fletcher High School and ask, and it's a challenge that we're giving to you as members and as alumni. Want to go to Bonda and say, you know, Bonda, over these years, you have supplied these 50 talented women who are senior women leaders today. And Bonda, thank you. And this is displayed at reception or in the hall, and there is a celebration that Bonda or Fletcher or Goromons has built up. So the challenge I'm giving to all of us is to say, you know what, when the Secretariat asks for information for where you went to high school, where you went to university, where you went for your training, we want to be able to say thank you as ICAZ, so that we can continue to sustain and maintain the brand. In conclusion, I just want to say this project was not a Nyasha Joe project. It was our project. We worked as a team. Your responses to the questionnaires, the interviews, when we walked around gathering information, but also we invited Doug Mambura, for example, as a marketer, to look at the ICAZ brand. Memory Ngui looked at a simple question: are CA is competent as a renowned HR person? We had Anne Sudaka talking about the cooking of an accountant. How is an accountant made? Because that's his business. We had a lady, Chenyesi Wenlov in Bulawayo, who is a specialist in gender, looking at the journey that the women CAs have yet to go through to be what they are today. And surprise, surprise, some revelations where we were far too late to realize we are not being fair and balanced. But however, with celebrating that, as soon as our eyes were opened, your weekend and other programs are going to begin to run. So it is about your celebration of your institute. Some of us were only there in the front line to pick our collective memories in order to put our heritage in pen and paper for now, for 10 years, and into the future. And I want to thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Zhou. I think you really then showed us how, the book what the book will look like, and those challenges, that you gave us, and that coat of arms which we have everywhere. I have it on my business cards, I have it on letterheads, I have it everywhere. Just knowing what it means. So I now know what it means. Obviously, having worked with Mr. Zhou for so long in the recent, But ladies and gentlemen, you really need to find out what that coat of arms means. I promise you, it will change the way you look at yourself. It will change the way you look at everything. Your behavior will even be impacted. It really helps you to understand the weight of this brand. I've been fortunate enough to be working very closely with Mr. Zhou over the past couple of months. And I actually thought I knew quite a bit, but you then realize there's so much more that you need to learn, and so much growth that is required, especially for us. And I'm just going to read one comment which really spoke to me from Roy, and this is Roy Chmanikide, former president as well, saying, we are honored to have you as our forefathers, such inspiring stories. It really does inspire, and it will help to set the tone in terms of what we want to do for the next 100 years. So really a big thank you to the speakers who really have shown us the journey that was walked and the challenge that we now have as the future to ensure that in 2090 or whenever it's going to be, someone will speak about what we would have done and how we held the brand up and how we have helped them then, even though we probably won't be around at that time. So, and another comment is talking about leaving a footprint. That is so profound. And a comment from Jeremiah, really, merci beaucoup. They say, thank you so much. Thank you very much. It's been really a great session. I think everyone has been inspired. So we've got less of questions, but more of comments, really. So I'm just going to go through some of the other comments. Brilliant presentation. That's Christopher. We are proud of the contribution that you have made to the profession. And yes, Mr. Zhou, the future looks even more exciting for the future, for the Institute. The future looks even more exciting for the Institute. So these are just, some of the comments that we've been getting. We have 8 minutes in terms of our scheduled time, but with the indulgence of the speakers, I just want to maybe borrow 5 minutes of your time so that we don't rush this final session. I think there's so much really that, in terms of the comments that are coming through that I just want to go through. And another comment is really something that's very important in terms of how the role that ICAZ plays, as a key economic player through its members and the training offices, and how integrity has centered itself, at everything that we do in our organizations and in our and as individuals in all that we do. So that message of integrity is very critical. In fact, let me move to the side a little bit. Integrity, 100 years of integrity. I think that is very, very critical. And I think that's one of the core messages of the book. I see another comment popping up from Matt's former president, former CEO again, in terms of just thanking the team led by Mr. Zhou and the speakers as well for reminding us what a great profession we have. So these are just some of the comments coming through. What I want to do now is to just quickly glance over at the Q&A to see if there's anything. And well, the first question is, how can I get a book? And then the second question is around how the importance of retaining our integrity in this era. How can one not compromise whilst maintaining their integrity and also balancing business interests? So maybe I'll ask Mr. Kudenga and Mr. Zhou to just in a few seconds try and respond to say, how can a professional remain their integrity intact in this era? And how can one not compromise whilst maintaining the integrity of their name and balancing business interests? I think that's a very important question. And Mr. Zhou, perhaps you can come through first and try and respond to that.
Thank you very much. For me, it's very simple. Just be a person of integrity. It may actually mean losing a business opportunity. Be true to yourself. Be true to yourself. And very soon, people will notice that you are a person of honor and integrity. What is the alternative or the option? That's my comment on upholding. And it has been proven over these years that we can uphold integrity.
Thank you so much. We can absolutely uphold integrity. Mr. Kudenga, is there anything that you want to perhaps add, on that?
Yeah, I think Mr. Zhou has actually, covered this issue of integrity. And really, I would like to say to my colleagues, the issue of professionalism is what carries the day. At the end of the day, you become a winner because of your professionalism. Just to go back to, for you to understand, when I said I set up in practice, I made sure that I wouldn't get to work merely because I had set up as a black person. And I think people will bear witness. I just said to myself, the issue of integrity, we cannot compromise. As far as professionalism is concerned, we are not going to compromise. We would rather not get the work, but we want to get the work because we are professional and we do it professionally. And that is what has seen us grow to who we are today. It's just a question of integrity. And I'm saying, just say to yourself, I am a man of integrity. And one other issue I also want just to mention is that for people in industry, I think my advice is to say, as an accountant, you have to maintain your integrity. The one thing you must avoid is the issue of entitlement. Once you avoid entitlement, you say, I'm entitled to this, I'm entitled to this, and the element of greediness, you will make sure you will survive. Because I have said, I've been involved with the liquidation of a number of banks. And one of the issues that has always come from those people who were running banks that were liquidated was to say, if only someone said no, this institution would not have gone into trouble. If only someone had said no, this institution would have gone into trouble. And who is that someone who is supposed to say no? It is the accountant. And at the previous addresses, I even mentioned to say, if an institution goes under, the first person I would really like to go to Jukurubi is the accountant. That's my response to issues of integrity.
Very profound responses. In fact, earlier today, I had another statement in a meeting where someone said ethics are non-negotiable. I think that's the sense that I'm getting from all these responses. It means losing sometimes, and you've got to pay that kind of cost as opposed to paying an unknown cost in the future. So do not compromise. I think that's what we've heard. And this is coming from people who've walked that journey and who've seen it. So it's not a textbook answer. It's based on decades of experience. So I think that does quite respond to that question. And more comments are also coming in from one of the contributors again. Anisu is just talking about how it was a pleasure and is so grateful. And Oliver is talking about how this is remarkable. The journey must and will continue, definitely. And there's also a suggestion there to say, you know, the book must be updated, say, every 25 years to keep the history of the profession intact. I think that's a suggestion there from Oliver in terms of updating that book every quarter century to ensure that we keep the history of the profession intact. Okay, so there's another question, Mr. Jo. There's a question, this is, I think, Mr. Jo, and I also maybe ask the CEO to come in terms of the cost of the book, like, and where it can be accessed.
Thank you very much, Owen. The book is going to be available in the next 1 month. What we have are a few samples that we're using for marketing. It's going to be available in the next few months, in the next 1 month. And at the launches, the books will be available for sale. And we're going to challenge the members to buy their own books, but also donate books to schools of their choice. I need to hasten and say this book also includes the register of all members. So you have an opportunity to go to the end of the book, identify your name, Nyasha P.S. Joe, put a line on it and keep it for posterity. Give it as a gift to enthuse and motivate your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. That is why it is a book for your family desk. But you also need to know that we have about 20 corporate organizations who have come to us because we have shown them the book. We have said they want to co-brand and put their logo on the bottom right-hand corner of the book because they want to associate and to work with your brand. That is how you are perceived and honored by the market. 20 top organizations have asked to have their logo on the cover of our book. Remarkable. And thanks to you. So let's sustain our integrity and we'll continue beyond the next century. I thank you. What's the price? We'll let you know in the next few days.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jo. I think that is a very, very robust answer, and that the value of that brand which we carry. We've also got a question from Jeremiah in terms of impact of brain drain. I'm not sure in what context. I think in terms of the fact that some of our members are working outside. I always say I don't view that. Before, I think I even allowed the CEO to come through, but I don't view it as brain drain. It shows the value of our brand, that you can walk into any country or almost any country and get a top post there. You know, most of our members are already out there holding influential posts, which speaks to the value of this brand, which was built over 100 years, and it has now become globally acceptable. So really, I think it's for me, it's a vote of confidence in our processes, and it's a challenge to us to say we've got to work and maintain that, so that in 2050, 2070, 2090, you know, a chartered accountant from Zimbabwe will still be able to walk into virtually any of the leading economies and hold a senior post there, you know, and obtain a senior post. So really, we're creating a global brand, really, and a global product, you know, in terms of this member of the Institute who can literally just cross borders at quite easily, just cross borders at ease, with ease, or at their will to just go into any country. So I actually don't see it as any sort of brain drain, but it's kind of more of a testament to our processes and how robust they are. And also a challenge to say we've got to maintain that. These are standards that were set by the founders and some of the senior members we have here. And we have a challenge to say, what do we need to do to maintain that? So that's just my view there. I don't know if, you know, maybe the CEO would want to add on in terms of what I've said. And then there's also another question in terms of whether we're going to get an electronic version of the book. I'll ask Mr. Zhou to come in again on that one.
Thank you. Probably I can make a comment on the issues of numbers. Rather than call it a brain drain, I'll see it as growth. I think Ngoni did allude to that. If we begin as 150 and we're 2,200, is that growth? We must, and in the book, there are ideas and comments and suggestions on how to grow. The top program in 1999 was a growth strategy. And so we must be creative and find ways to grow. But our brand is global and we must be proud about it. In fact, this book is a Zimbabwe celebration. The celebration of a success story of a Zimbabwean organization. And that is why the cover is a Zimbabwe background, that we are coming from Zimbabwe and we are going to be conquering the world because we are competent, we are ethical, and we are men and women of integrity. The electronic book, we have explored it, and we believe it's possible, but at this stage we have not yet started on the mechanics of whether we go with Amazon or other, but it's something on the table. It has been raised before, and we are looking into it, and we will brief the membership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zhou. So I think we are now, I'd asked for an additional 5 minutes, but it's now been 6. So in the interest of time, I think we just really have to end here. Just a slight confession. Normally when I moderate sessions, I'm always really focusing on time. And if speakers do go beyond their time, I always then prompt them. But for this one, I have to be honest, I was just enjoying it so much, I completely stopped doing that. So apologies for that, and eating into the time that we had actually allocated. I think that I have to be honest about, to say I was thoroughly enjoying those stories and just the inspiration. So I actually stopped looking at the clock. But well, I think we are at 3:37 now. So maybe what I want to just do is to just go around maybe across the panelists, if they have any perhaps parting shot, but please do try and keep them under 30 seconds if you can. Any parting shots before we close the session. And I am going to start with Mr. Kudenga. Okay, while this is trying to get
sorry, I was on mute. Sorry, coordinator. My parting shot, I have nothing much to say, Mr. Moderator, except to encourage members to buy this book. They will learn a lot from this particular book. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kudenga. Then perhaps Mr. Joe, your parting shot.
I just want to say thank you to the whole membership, the secretariat, everybody who is part of this. And just to say, to repeat, we are an incredibly attractive institution. We must walk tall but humbly and maintain our integrity, and it will take us far. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joe. William, the CEO, Mr. William and this further, maybe any parting shot?
Thank you, Owen. I would just like to thank everyone, particularly my speakers, for speaking so passionately about our book, and also thank everyone who has attended. It never actually, and I've heard some of these stories before, but each time Nyasha and Mr. Kudenga speak about the profession, I feel renewed. For those of us who go to church, I think we always go for annual renewals, but I think I've been having these renewals for the past 20 years as a CA, and I never really get tired of hearing motivating stories and just sharing their journeys with us. So my parting shot is for everyone to participate in the launch. Let's buy the book. Let's also sell the book, as in the idea to our organizations, to our colleagues. We want this project to be very successful. I would want to thank you very, very much for your attendance. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, William. So I think before I actually hand over to our junior VP to give us, official closing remarks, I also wanted to highlight something in terms of what was spoken about, in terms of the support that we are going to need. So we'll be sending out a questionnaire, which will just, talk about the issues that have been mentioned, the donation of a plaque, whether or not you want to pre-order a book, whether or not you want to be an ambassador, to go back to your high school or to your university, to your home province. I, for example, went to high school in the Midlands province, and I'll be going back there as an ambassador. So all that questionnaire is going to come through, and when it does, please do take a few minutes to just go through it, and then we'll be in touch, because, like has been mentioned, within the next month the book will be here, and then we're going to launch it, and members will then get a chance to just participate in that process, our way of perhaps paying it back or paying it forward, as it were. But I think for the level of this webinar, I think for me to try and give any sort of closing remarks, that would be remiss. So I'm going to just ask our JVP, Madam Manyara, to just give us a few closing remarks, before we call it a day.
Thank you, Owen, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you all for attending this pre-launch webinar for the ICAZ Centenary book. And I believe my job here is very simple, as we've come to the end of this webinar. I'm just here to thank you all for participating in this webinar. But before I do so, just allow me to say just a few words. Yes, it is the ICAZ Centenary book. We've all heard the speakers, how they've spoken passionately about this book. It is no ordinary book at all, but one that which every member of the Institute should have as a priceless possession in our homes and in our offices. It is a book that is basically giving a detail of the 100-year journey of the Institute And I believe most of us participated in having this great book into being. And now that the work has been done, information has been collected, and it has been put together, I think we now need to really sit down, have the book, relax, and we go through the history of ICAZ. I believe we must know where we came from so that we build on the next 100 years. We had Mr. Kudenga's experience on his journey as a chartered accountant and as an entrepreneur and the great man that he is today. He and the other unsung heroes are also part of the champions that went before us to make the Institute what it is today. We have all contributed, others in a bigger way and others in a smaller way, but I believe nevertheless the contribution is just worth it. And as we close off this webinar, I encourage each and every one of us to be involved in these book launch activities. Do not be left behind, be there when things are happening, volunteer to do some activities, as this would be the only way that some of us will get to understand the contents of the book and its importance. Don't stand on the terraces to watch while least others are making history. In our different ways, I think let's just buy this priceless possession and let each and every one of us have a copy in their homes, but let us make an effort, like what has been said, to identify some institutions, some schools, which we can gift with this book. We came from somewhere, so let us retrace our footsteps to our former schools and let's give them this gift as we encourage more students to join the accounting profession. It is in our best interest to let our former schools and institutions see the 100-year journey we have walked and encourage them to be part of the next 100 years. We should just remember that this is not just a book on the shelf. It is a book that is detailing history like no other profession has done. It is a book of record-breaking achievements, determinations of men and women who upheld the integrity of the profession, triumphs and victories of those who never gave up on their dreams of being chartered accountants. It is a book which gives a glimpse of people who had a vision and pursued it with all their might, who believed in the impossible to be possible. So don't be left behind. One day in the next 100 years, you will also tell this same story even when you are gone. So in conclusion, allow me to just thank everyone and to thank the following people. Everyone who has attended this webinar and participated one way or the other. We just want to thank you so much for just making it through. To all the speakers and the presenters who have taken time to take us through the book and the process of putting it together. I can say it was not an easy process, but we should be happy that we now have our book, and I'll underline our book because we now have it. Mr. Kudenga, thank you so much for taking us through your journey as a chartered accountant in a racially unfair environment. I believe it was tough, but you were determined. And all the members that contributed one way or the other to have this documentary. To Mr. Jo and Tim, hey, we thank you so much for putting together this wonderful piece. It's just a priceless piece of work that you did. We can't put a place. And the ICAZ Secretariat, thank you for working behind the scenes, working hand in hand with the research team, collecting information and putting it together. And to everyone else who was involved in having this book, one way or the other, we thank you. We appreciate all the effort. We appreciate the stress that went into putting this book together. I think, Nyasha, in your presentation, you said we are a global brand, and that's what we are. So chartered accountants, as chartered accountants, we must walk in the light and not in the dark. And quoting from Mr. Kudenga, he says, let's not compromise our integrity. In whatever we do, professionalism carries the day. As such, let's understand our coat of arms so that we continue to walk in the light and not to compromise on our integrity. Otherwise, thank you all for coming through for this webinar. I thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I will not say anything further except have a great day, depending on where you are and what time it is. So this brings us to the end of the session.
Thank you, Coordinator.